Hello, everybody. Nicole here with The Living Well. I am so excited. We're recording this podcast on some extra controversial issues that have really been plaguing my clients over the last couple of weeks. So I wanted to address it and present it to you, you listeners, so that you can benefit from this information as well. So today I have two special guests. I have Amy Ahrens. She is a holistic wellness coach, and she's going to be talking with us today. She is like a master at your gut brain health and everything holistic from a variety of different approaches. So we love trying to think about how we can do things in a holistic way, because I will just say real quick on that I have terrible anxiety, and I went to my doctor, and what they want to do is just hand you a prescription. That's their whole answer. So it's nice that Amy comes packed with other alternatives that are not going to have terrible side effects and aren't addictive. And then we have John Robinson, who's with us. He is the founder of Pathways Coaching, also a life coach, and a podcaster. He has a podcast called Somebody's Story. So check that out. I really enjoy that as well. And really quickly, John, tell us a little bit about your background, because you were working in an institution, right? And then you transferred over to doing your own thing. Now, you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so my background is I have a bachelor's degree in social work. I worked as a case manager at a mental health facility for 4 years, and also did a bit of a clinical internship there as well for group therapy. And I have a little tiny bit of experience in the criminal justice sector as well, just in as an internship in the past. That was very early on in my education. But I've it was a windy journey for me to get to where I'm at, but now I'm getting into coaching and life coaching, and I kind of found my way into this area for people in toxic situations. And I'm excited to be forging my own path.
Awesome. So I think it's like really awesome too, your background and how it relates to mental health because of your exposure. Like, you've saw a lot of domestic violence from the victim's perspective.
And the person as well.
And yeah, okay. So you understand it because you lived in that universe for so long, which is critical. And we don't see that a lot in the therapeutic industry. They just, because they haven't had a lot of exposure or training on domestic violence, they give terrible advice. So you do, which has been awesome. And you're also tapping into some like cyber stalking, bullying, decoding, if you
so
will,
basically what the way I would describe that is that I think that because the therapists that were at my agency, they did encounter a lot of the same things that I did. But the issue that I found, and this wasn't just an issue with my agency, this was kind of a field-wide issue, whether it was professionals or authorities, is that when it came to the issue of cyber stalking that seems to have emerged in the past, several years, and is kind of a new issue, the lack of education surrounding it has been woeful. And I was initially dismissive of it as well, early on in my career, until I saw enough cases where I started to notice a pattern, and I felt like, it was starting to feel outside the role that I was able to do. And that's part, there were many reasons why I stepped aside from what I was doing, but that's one of the reasons.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, so today what we're going to talk about is the tendency that we have when we're in toxic relationships to continue to perpetuate the cycle unconsciously. This is all being done subconsciously, right? Because this happened to me and I had no clue that I was educated on narcissistic abuse and domestic violence, but I didn't realize the role that I was playing in it. And I hate that sounds kind of like you are blaming the victim, because that's not what we're doing. We are empowering the survivors with an education on how they can shift their role and the toxic cycle that takes place. Because I was choosing partners, it was my choice. And as I was talking to Amy earlier today, I would meet really nice guys, but I wouldn't even give them the time of day. So on some level, I was participating in this process. I just had no clue that I was choosing those that were toxic because of my own programming and what I've been exposed to. So that's the reason why that happens. because we learn from our parents everything essentially. And when they
Mhm.
model for us a certain behavior pattern, I don't know though, that's my case. Amy has a little bit of a different story. She came from a
Mhm.
pretty healthy background. So
I did
it,
as well, actually.
so
I
maybe
felt
that's why you didn't end up staying in those unhealthy relationships,
Mhm.
but you ended up requiring and pursuing healthier situations because it just didn't sit well with you. Is that right?
exactly. I
Yeah,
think yeah,
oh, go ahead.
your inner child moments of how you were raised definitely affects how you live your life. Yeah, being I am so grateful and thankful that I did have a good childhood and I felt the unconditional love from my grandparents and my parents. And that was the ultimate goal, is to find that. But when you are so young, you just go with the first like cute guy that gives you attention kind of thing.
Mhm.
And you don't realize you're in it until it's been years. And you're just like, what do I do now?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember looking back now, like being stuck in that, but I didn't realize until he proposed. And then I was like, oh my gosh, I have to deal with this the rest of my life. And that was one of the biggest decisions of my life, is like giving that ring back at 24 and
Mhm.
moving on with my life. Like that was a big, huge decision. And I had already lost my mom. And that was the biggest thing that I was like, oh, he knew my mom. I have to stay with him because that connection.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was like, oh yeah, this is not healthy. I can't do this.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And my thing was more that, I didn't necessarily, I'd never been with anyone I would call a narcissist, but I have been in unhealthy situations before. And I think and while I think it's easy for almost anyone to get trapped into an unhealthy situation, I would say that just from my observation, from seeing what I've seen in my career, that the people who tend to get in those situations over and over again are the people who have those chronic childhood issues. The repetition of it is basically, because if you have that, if that is what you see basically from birth or from childhood, that is going to be your comfort zone, whether that's a positive or negative comfort zone, regardless. So I think that someone like me who was I think anyone can get into an unhealthy situation, but to get out of it and recognize and do that work, to create situations and opportunities for yourself and be able to recognize what a healthy situation is. I think that is much easier for someone who has had a healthier childhood situation and a healthier background versus someone who hasn't.
Yeah, and so the trick here is this: most people don't realize they're in unhealthy childhood. Most people are in full-blown denial about that. If you even ask them, they'll be like, no, my childhood, even in my case, my childhood wasn't terrible. My parents didn't hit us. They didn't, we always had food, we always had somewhere to live. Nobody did drugs, we didn't have major catastrophes that took place.
Mm-hmm.
But also your parents could be neglectful too on an emotional level that affects you. So it may not be that they're evil, vicious, malicious people.
Right.
It's just that they don't understand their emotional intelligence and they don't know how to be there for you or support you from an emotional capacity. And children need that. And if you weren't treated in such a way, then that is not on your radar as normal. You don't even know what that is or what that looks like. And so this was like huge for me because I did not break that cycle until I came to terms with the fact that I was attracted to basically straight up sociopaths. Well, my father for sure is a narcissist. That's my opinion. I can't diagnose him. I'm not a doctor, but according to my got a
Personal diagnosis.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In my humble opinion,
Mhm.
based on my research and as an expert, I believe that he is. And so because that was modeled for me as normal, that's what's in whatever's been stored in your subconscious really dictates to your everything, the way you see the
Right.
world, your view, your thoughts. It's what's normal to you. Like in America, I always tell my clients this: in America, we eat breakfast, we have pancakes and eggs or whatever. That's our normal American breakfast, right? If you're unhealthy. Amy's like, no, we don't, but we have
I don't think
smoothies.
Yeah.
But if you go to like Scotland, they have like blood pudding, or you go to other countries. So it's just based on what you've been told is normal, and what you've been told is
Right.
the default. So when you're out in the dating scene, and I also this theory is also talked about in the book called The Human Magnet Syndrome by Ross Rosenberg.
Hmm.
he talks about how you are attracted to what you know. And that's how the
Right.
brain is designed.
You don't know.
So
You don't know.
you think
It-
we have this connection. That's my type. That's the person that we have this chemistry, but really what it really boils down to is consistency and what you've been exposure.
Not just that, but I would say it's almost an attraction to a role rather than a person. Like
Okay.
it's very much, like a lot of people can fill the role of a narcissist. A lot of people can fill the role of a toxic partner. It's not necessarily, even though it's not necessarily a common thing, it's not a unique, it's far from a unique thing either. Like, I mean, one of the things that gets people in these situations over and over again is that role that we talk about. We talk about the codependent role and the narcissist role, and sometimes even when it comes to people who have other personality disorders, in that cluster B personality area, whether it's borderline personality disorder, even though the motivations might be different, there's some similar toxic traits among there. And actually, with borderline personality disorder, a lot of those tendencies stem from a fear of abandonment, whereas with narcissism, it stems from a fear of the bruising of the ego.
Totally.
That's good.
So then how do we break this? That's what we're going to talk about today, because that's what's going to be the catalyst for change
Mhm.
in our listeners' lives. Because most of them are going to sit back after hearing this and go, oh my God, yes, I do that. Yes, I do keep attracting the same. They call it attracting. Some people say you're attracting a narcissist. I disagree. I don't believe you're attracting a narcissist. I believe you're tolerating a narcissist, whereas somebody like an Amy, who was raised, so like in my case, my father was a narcissist, so that's normal to me, and that's what it feels. That's what love feels like. Toxicity. It's uncomfortable. It's unhealthy. It's not, it's not mutual. It's not, all of the standard procedures for a healthy relationship were not even on my radar. Right? I have no idea. I had no idea what a healthy relationship even looked like. What the heck's a boundary? Like, what do you mean reciprocal? Like, what
Yeah.
are you talking about? But Amy was modeled that. So when
Mhm.
Amy meets a narcissist, it's going to irritate her. It's not going to feel good because she's not used to that. She's not thinking, oh, this is what love looks like. She's going to go, whoa, why are you talking to me like that? Like, my dad
Mhm.
didn't talk to my mother like that. That's not
Right.
what is expected. That's unacceptable behavior. And so she was trained. So what we had to do, though, the cool thing that I found out, and that just really has generated the production of the Living Well in the first place, is what I learned in life and health coaching school, is what all of us understand is neuroplasticity. The reality is we can learn a new way. We don't have
Mhm.
to keep going down the same path and doing the same thing over and over again. First, by educating ourselves and becoming aware, because first of all, we're all in denial. I have no
Mhm.
idea why I'm dating the same guy 35 times. For me, it was so many times I had no choice
Mhm.
but to accept reality. But some people might not realize I'm keep repeating the same pattern and I'm not happy and I want something different. So we have the capacity to then learn a new way and plug in like an Amy's way, right? Amy's not tolerating this kind of behavior. I could learn what she does and teach myself this barrier factor where it becomes intolerable to me, which I have
Mhm.
done. And then I can go, okay, I don't want to do this anymore because now I've learned that's not healthy. I did come from a very toxic background, and this is what I should expect. Your expectations can change. Yeah.
Mhm.
What do you think
Right.
about that, John? From the male
So I would
perspective?
say that the reason that the cycles most likely happen are because, like you said, this modeling of behavior, and also this fulfillment of a role. Like I said, there's actually a concept in family systems called multi-generational transmission process, and it's not, I think I could be wrong, but I think it may be a combination of genetic tendencies as well as just social conditioning when you're around your family members. I know when I was in a unhealthy, I wasn't with a narcissist, when I was in an unhealthy relationship for a while, I almost romanticized that kind of like like I romanticized like love is pain, that kind of thing, like it was just like, and part of me, I have to own up to the fact that I had some toxic behaviors and toxic tendencies as well. That was more on a reactive level though. I think people who are attracted to narcissists are very much seeking the validation that they haven't felt maybe as a child, you mentioned neglect and those types of systems. But I think that one of the ways of breaking the cycle, as you mentioned, neuroplasticity, it's almost like if we exercise and we don't, like, one of the things I talk about with exercise is that it's a good model for resiliency. Our muscles, literally, the fibers break down and then rebuild stronger, because we're putting ourselves through intentional discomfort to get to that other side where it comes out stronger. Now, that's uncomfortable for us. And a lot of people who have codependency issues have anxiety issues as well. And people who have anxiety are going to avoid discomfort, even if it means, staying in a situation that they're used to. And you use the word reciprocity, and talked about reciprocal things, a reciprocal relationship. I think that a better word for that, actually, at least in my mind, would be a reflective relationship, because reciprocal implies that, in a relationship, the idea of reciprocation can be used to hold something over your head. Like, I did this for you, and that's a very common thing that narcissists do. They do something for their codependents and say, I did this for you, so you have to do this for me, or they guilt them into it. Whereas reflective is more like a reflection of attitudes, a reflection of feelings, a reflection of emotion. And while if we over rely on that as well, that can be bad. A reciprocation gets caught up in actions, whereas a reflection can get caught up in what you see in your self-image and your image of the other person, a realistic image of that. I was talking in the men's group today about how, if someone else's, mirror has dust all over it, like let's say that we're all mirrors of each other, if someone else's mirror has dust all over it, or if it's like a funhouse mirror, like, we're not gonna have a realistic image of who we are in that relationship, because they keep distorting it for us, or they keep obscuring our own healthy image.
Yeah, that's so true. I think that's right. I think we're right along the lines of the same exact concept. I think relationships should be mutual give and take. Both parties' needs are being met. Not all of them, but it's
Right.
important for both sides to be heard, validated. Intimacy exists because you can be honest and that the
Right.
person's going to receive you and that they care, right? I respect you. I want you to be happy. I care about you. I love you. They're not keeping track of who's done what for who, but you're both looking out for the interests of the other person because you care. But the problem
in Corinthians, it says love keeps no record of wrongs.
Yeah, exactly. But the problem with the narcissist is they really don't care. They really don't. They literally are hardwired to only think about what I need, when I need it, and how I'm going to get it. And so when they look and see that they're doing something, or the needs of another person. I had a girl in my one of my support groups the other day, and she kept telling her husband, who has very well off, that she needed a new bed, and he was just like, meh. She's like, I can't sleep.
Right.
And he's just like, meh, I don't feel like it. He has the money. He literally was not moved by her necessities. He didn't feel any empathy or compassion, huh?
And yet that also sounds like a power move on his part. Like, I can just turn this down whenever I want. You are entirely dependent on me for this bed. Exactly. You are at my mercy.
You get the bed when I say.
Right. Narcissists like to play God.
Of course. Yeah. It's all about power and control. Awesome. So how do we break this? Like you said, I thought you said a very integral part, that if we can just take one pinpoint thought from this whole video, is uncomfortableness, right? The discomfort of change, because change is not comfortable. Like my clients we asked at one of our codependency groups, we're like, so what happens when you try to date someone who's not a narcissist? And they're like, oh, it's so boring. It's so slow. It's so uncomfortable. And I'm like, bingo, that's where you want to go. You need to go, like you said, like, we work out, we are building new muscles. It's in the space of uncomfortableness that transformation takes place, right? So you have to kind of get comfortable being uncomfortable. Like me, Amy, we're just saying we have some new business perspectives that we have to get involved in that are a little uncomfortable for us. And you just got to do it anyways. And step over the bad programming. And that's what I have to do now in my own dating life and personal life going forward, is when I'm attracted to somebody, I can't just go with what feels good, because I know that my programming is not coming from a healthy space. So I've got to go against what I feel, step over that, and go into and acknowledge what's uncomfortable so that I could sit there. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd love to hear Amy's thoughts on this as well. But I found that this dichotomy, I feel like there's sort of a false dichotomy between, dangerous and, dramatic and toxic, and the other side of boring, and just mundane and and healthy. I don't think that those two, healthy and dangerous never go together, and healthy and toxic never go together. But you can have, and because I don't want people to think like, oh, I'm never going to have that excitement again. No, you can have an exciting, I'll say, whether it's a date, just a, a temporary dalliance, or just, I don't know where the word dalliance just came from, but like just, or whether it's like a long-term relationship, it can be exciting. The I think sometimes where the boredom comes from is this: we clam up after we expose ourselves to someone, and it gets used against us in a way where we don't want to be vulnerable. There's an excitement that comes with vulnerability, and when we do that with a healthy person, it can do it in a way where it's an exciting level of growth. Whereas when we do it with an unhealthy person, it can be used against us as a dangerous weapon. We're opening our rib cages to someone. Yeah, we're opening our rib cages to somebody.
If you don't feel the feels that you want, then that's the wrong person.
Exactly.
Even if they're not the narcissist, if you're not feeling like you want to feel, and them feeling good about you and vice versa, then it's okay to not be the right person. You're like, okay, next. And you just keep going, kind of thing. I remember saying to a lot of friends, I was like, yeah, he's a nice guy, but there's no connection.
Exactly.
They would be like, oh yeah, you want to have another date, kind of thing. And I'm like, I don't want to waste your time, and I don't want to lead you on in any way, but I don't feel the connection here. So let's just,
So Amy, so your husband now, you guys have a very healthy relationship, but he wasn't the standard procedure for you, was he?
No. I've always dated like a little bit older than me, but I didn't really ever want to go past a certain point. And we met at a coffee and tea bar, and it was just kind of like, oh yeah, we're just friends. We were friends for a while, and more and more people kept seeing the connection with us, and it was just like, no, we can't because he's older. And one of my friends, my best friend, said, don't let age be the determining factor. And that's when I let that go. Okay, age is just a number, just like weight. It's all about how you feel, right? So that's when I was just like, okay, everything that I want to feel, we have it for each other, and we give each other what we need, and that unconditional love that I hadn't felt since my mother. And that was a big connection that I always wanted to feel my mother in my everyday life, and just having that unconditional love. I'm like, oh, that's it. That's what
she was exposed to it, so she knew. She had the thermometer there. She had a baseline to reflect it off of, that this is love. This is what it feels like, because she experienced that with her own mother. Her mother passed away, unfortunately, because of a mental health issue. That is why you ended up being in this role. But so that was important to you to feel that same connection again. And that's what you were looking for. That's awesome.
Yes. With her taking her own life due to misusing her antidepressants, that's what really got me into being mentally healthy. I believe being mentally healthy is just as important as being physically healthy, because there's so many things that we don't realize that's going on with our body, like our gut health, that affects our mental health. And I look back, and she didn't eat healthy. She was overweight, and there were so many different little things that I just want to prime and prep my body now, so I'm never at that state of mind. And that's where I help people too, to let them know they're not alone, and there's natural holistic solutions that can help.
Awesome. So really quickly, going back to the topic here. So what I was telling Amy earlier is that she gives all of us hope that there are still healthy people out there, and that there are healthy relationships to be had. So we get that, like I have a client who's a male, And I'm like, there's 8 billion people on this planet. You don't have to settle for a narcissist. You know,
Right.
that's just one human being. There's 8 billion others, and not all of
Mhm.
them are, with a personality disorder. And so, are unhealthy, or who will abuse you. So you don't have to settle, because these people get in the idea that there's nobody else out there. No one's ever going to love me. I'm going to be alone.
Right.
And in reality, like you said, is, first of all, we could talk about being alone, because that's a whole nother topic, but that's
Mhm.
not like the devil. Being alone
It's
is
not.
not the worst thing that can happen to you. But when you're codependent and you're suffering from pathological loneliness
Mhm.
inside, you feel unfull. You feel like you're half of a person when you're not in a relationship, and they don't want to feel that loneliness again. And so,
Right.
we'll talk about that on another episode, but so the reality, though, is there are healthy relationships out there. There are healthy people that are still connected to their emotions and their feelings, who can be there for you in an emotional capacity.
And can be
So,
exciting,
yeah.
like that.
So you could still have the love of your life, and you
Right.
shouldn't give up on that idea, because that's the other thing that happens to codependents. We finally get out of a narcissist. Like, look at me and Kelly. We get out of a narcissistic relationship, and we're like, never again. I'm not
Right.
dating. Never going there again. And it's not the right attitude to have either, because why would you give up on what you really want just because you're afraid of running into another pathologically disordered human being, right?
Right. And the one thing the thing you mentioned about being alone is that, like, I think so many people, because we're fed this idea in society of, like, this, fairy tale ending, of happily ever after. And, like, I've developed this idea of happily ever forward, where it's just like, just keep moving forward, no matter what you do, no matter what the situation is. Not everything might always turn out the way you want it to be. And also the way that if you fall in love with being in love rather than just falling in love with a person, that person becomes replaceable. That person becomes replaceable in a way where it's just like anyone can fill that role. And it's so much like, I was fortunate in the sense, and this got distorted from me after I was in a relationship that wasn't good for me for several years, and I had to relearn this. But typically before that, I had always been the type of person where it was like, I never really was crazy about the idea of being in a relationship, but it was like, I would meet someone. It wasn't like I want a girlfriend, or I want like a fiance, or I want a wife. It was like, oh, I want her. Like, I want this person. Like, I meet a person that's like, oh, that person right there intrigues me. This is who I want. And, like, sometimes that did get me in trouble, because I'd have tunnel vision, and that can get us in trouble as well. But, when we start to try to fill a void, and that's how rebound relationships happen a lot of the time. But, but when we start to try to fill a void instead of trying to actually appreciate a human being and connect with another person, we start looking at dating as, a system where we're trying to win a prize rather than trying to connect with a human.
Yeah.
That's switching the mindset.
Totally.
So many women that are in the situation say, I don't want this, I don't want this, I don't want this. Well, you're putting it out there, those words, and
Right.
the mindset shift is, I want somebody that I can connect with. I want somebody that's nice and kind and caring. Cut out those nice track to that, instead of the words that you're saying with the don't in front of it.
Yeah,
So
instead of focusing on what you don't want, focus on what you do want. So the other concept too is, you can also connect with people outside of a relationship, as far as dating. You can build your life full of people that you're making connections with, or having great. I do that. I'm so lucky. I have that with you guys. I have that with a whole variety of people all over the world, really. And you can connect and have an exciting life outside of a relationship. So that's the other perspective. It's like, you don't want to go into a relationship with this feeling of desperation, like you have to be with someone, because then that puts you in a compromising position, right? You start tolerating bad behavior. So somehow we digress, but the reality is to shut down that old pattern, you have to do something different than you've ever done before. And so you can Google healthy relationships, boundaries, standards, and work on your relationship with yourself, so that you care enough about your own future that you are willing to do whatever it takes to go after what you really want, instead of just settling for being abused, which is
Mhm.
actually damaging, right? To your everything, your physical, mental
Yeah.
health, everything. So
And
It starts with self-love. And when you love yourself, you only let kind and loving things come into your life.
yeah, I was single for a number of years, and I think it eventually bothered my friends and the people around me and my family more than it actually bothered me. Like it made them less like more uncomfortable, and I was fine with it. Like I'd be in a situation where like I'd go on a date, and I'd either turn the person down, or they'd turn me down, or whatever it may be, and like they'd try to give me unsolicited advice as if I was broken up about it, like or upset about it, and I was like, guys, it's fine. Like I'm okay with the fact that this didn't work out. Like it's just there's I'll find somebody else. I'm not in a, because I think we have this idea, and honestly, I think that we put this pressure on women more than we put this on men, especially. I think we have two milestones that we kind of put pressure on people in society. I think that with men, we put pressure on men to lose their virginity by a certain time, and with women, we put pressure on women to either get married or have kids by a certain time. And
Exactly.
I think that like we have these schedules in our minds that lead us to compare ourselves to other people instead of just going on our own journeys and figuring things out for ourselves. And the second I shifted that mindset and learned how to do that, and it took a little bit, I just became so much happier, and it became so much easier for me to identify exactly what I wanted and not try to desperately you know now, like I said, sometimes it would cause tunnel vision for me, but that to me, that was preferable than just settling for, like this.
you'll
I
do.
liked, yeah, exactly. You know,
I did
Yeah,
that.
that's so good. All right, well, we're going to wrap this up because we could probably talk into oblivion, but we wanted to bring this valuable information. So now you know the one that needs to change when you're in a toxic situation is you, because you're the only one that can control yourself. You can't control other people. You can't walk around the world. This is what me and Amy were talking about before. You can't walk around the world telling everybody else to be different. Like, that's not even our right to do. Everybody's choosing every day who they want to be and what type of life they want to live. And it's not up for us to determine if it's even to be judgmental about it. Like, you should just let people live the way they want to live. That's their personal right to choose. It's free will. But
right.
we have to choose what we want in our own lives and what we expect, and then have a good, solid relationship with ourselves so that we feel responsible for that and we're okay with doing whatever it takes. Like, you and her come from a place where, and now me, come from a place where it's like, I don't have to be, I'm not desperate to be with somebody. So that means
Right.
that I can be by myself until I find the right one. I'm going to be choosy about who I end up with and not just tolerate less than what I really want and be unhappy and miserable and abused.
Right. And if
So
I could add to that
That's
real
good.
quick, sometimes you might find the right one, and it just might be the wrong situation or the wrong circumstances or the wrong time. And that's okay. There's other situations. This idea of the one that was perpetrated by Disney and all these other things is just, it's so unhealthy. Like
it's so wrong.
there will be a situation that works for you. And
Mhm.
if there isn't, that's okay too.
Absolutely. There's 8 billion people on this planet, and
Mhm.
one of them is probably going to work out. And if not, there's probably 2.
Right.
Like, there's so many people that we don't have to sell ourselves out and end up being, and let's just be honest, in the end of the day, if you end up being with an abuser, you're going to get very ill and sick anyways.
Mhm.
So
Right.
it's not like you're being unreasonable or selfish or picky. This is really a matter of mental health and your physical sanity. Like, this isn't something to be taken lightly. So anyways,
Mhm.
we're going to wrap it up, and we'll see you guys in the next
Sure.
episode. Thank you guys for being here. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much for
Thank you,
calling.
Nicole.